2024 is a make or break season for guys like Najee Harris, Drake London, David Njoku, and maybe even Breece Hall. We discuss players that are on their final chance to prove their worth in fantasy on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. I'm one of your co-hosts, Michelle Magdziuk, and when I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst for NFL Network.
And I'm your other co-host, Vinnie Iyer. And when I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL fantasy and betting, the schedule, which comes out tonight. We're excited about it here. And all that good stuff at sportingnews.com. So we'll have all that for you. So check it out, as well as NFL.com and NFL Network. Schedule really shows. Should be exciting tonight.
Oh, yeah. Schedule release is a ton of fun. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. All right, so we're going to get into guys that are in their make or break season, right? We're giving them one final chance to prove their worth. And maybe if they don't prove their worth, they're dead to us in fantasy. Maybe they just fall down the rankings. And this first guy I'm going to start with, we're going to go through running backs first. Obviously, he's already proven some of his worth, right? I'm asking him to prove that he's elite. And that's Breece Hall. Now, he's entering his third season, super young at 22 years old, turns 23 in May, later on in May. But and it might be a silly thing to say that this is a make or break season because he was running back 7 in fantasy points per game last year. I get that. But also at the same time, he's had a lot of big games and a lot of poor games. He had 12 or fewer points in 11 of 24 career games. Nearly 50% of his games have been pretty meh, right? So I want him to do more. Do you think that's fair, Vinny, for me to say?
Yeah, I think that's fair to explore because we've only had one really awesome season from him right now. And of all those change of pace backs, I look at Devin Chan is a good example, right? These guys are big game dependent, and sometimes there's that inconsistency that comes with that. When Breece Hall explodes, it's an awesome game because he's making big plays, reeling off long runs, making catches, and he's locked in with some big numbers. But now we're asking him to be up there with Christian McCaffrey, Bijan Robinson, be that complete workhorse back that's going to put up numbers to the point where if you draft him early, you're expecting to carry your team the way some of these guys are. So to have a person carry your team, they have to be consistent. That's what McCaffrey does. He scores every week. At least, that's his floor. He's going to have good yards from scrimmage. So Breece Hall, I don't think he's transcended quite to that level. Part of it is he hasn't been totally healthy with his knees and getting that injury early in his career as a rookie. So there's a lot still yet to prove for Breece Hall. We've not really seen him work with Aaron Rodgers, so we don't know exactly what this offense will look like. They're not totally thrilled still about Nathaniel Hackett trying to squeeze him out of that role. So I'm not sure what you're going to get from Hall. I think right now we're hoping for the best, right? That everything's pointing upward for this offense. He's going to stay healthy. He's going to be the workhorse. All these things will add up. So let's hope so. But I think the one thing he has to show us, number one thing, is availability. That's the ability that we're looking for above everything else. So if he's durable and available, he'll have a big season. It'll be a make season for him.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what you brought up here. It's the cost, right? RB2, right after Christian McCaffrey. And you can't be scoring fewer than 9 points in 40% of your games in your career. If you're going as the RB2, you have no excuses. You have Aaron Rodgers back, a year removed from the ACL injury. They fixed up the offensive line. So in 2024, you have no excuses. Go be elite if you want to stay up there at the top of the running back ranks. Now, the next running back, it's Najee Harris, who has already fallen down ranks, but I think this might be the biggest player that's a make or break season in 2024, right? Because it's not just for fantasy, but also the Steelers declined his 5th-year option. So he's not under contract next year. This is his year to prove his worth to not only the fantasy fans, right, but also to the NFL and to the Steelers. He's running back 28 in fantasy points per game last year, running back 19 in 2022, running back 9 as a rookie in 2021. But this year, it's make or break. You get so much volume. The efficiency's been terrible, but they fixed the offensive line. They brought in better quarterbacks. They brought in Arthur Smith, who's a very friendly to running backs, right, in the running system. So get it done. Like, this is Najee Harris's year. If he can't get it done this year, I'm completely over him, even considering him on any of my fantasy teams moving forward.
Yeah, I think the Steelers would probably be done with him too if he
Yeah.
doesn't live up to expectations now. I mean, as a first round pick, I'm not going to bring up Rashad Mendenhall. I did, but in terms of the disappointment as a first round running back, I mean, he's not going to quite get there because he's had some production on this team, but we've expected him to just be great. Right? If you're in the first round, keep in mind Josh Jacobs was taken in the first round, and he's given you a scrimmage title and NFL rushing leader status there, where you haven't seen that yet from Najee Harris. That's what you need. I mean, we saw it from Christian McCaffrey as being a first round pick. He's lived up to that. Harris has not lived up to being a first round pick. So he really has to have a big season. You're right. They've done everything they can. They've overhauled the offensive line, went with the run heavy coordinator, one that they use 2 tight ends to help block, get some quarterback. So I don't know what else they can do. I mean, this is it. It's on a silver platter for him. If he doesn't get it done now, and there's a chance, right? It could really break down. I mean, I think that outcome is out there. And then you're just going to be done with this guy. But keep in mind, I mean, this is why you have to just keep tabs on Jalen Warren. And if they are frustrated with Harris early, Jalen Warren could be getting a much bigger role. I know he's a smaller guy, but I think they will lose patience quickly if they're not getting the production.
Yeah, I'm just hoping, like, it seems like at the end of every year, he turns it on, right? Something happens where he's like, oh, I remember how to run again. He needs to start faster, right? Just show us that you can be the first round running back. Like, just be the guy you were in Alabama. He was so stinking good. Like,
Even year one, I mean, just take the rookie year. I mean, we'll take that at this point in your career. It's still top 10 production, right?
yeah.
We don't need anything spectacular. Just get into the top 12 based on your volume and just be more efficient. Like, there's no reason with his volume and his role, he shouldn't be a top 10 running back just based on that alone. If you're not, then the talent is a big question.
Absolutely. One guy that you really like, but I'm putting him as a make or break year. It's DeAndre Swift. Now, looking at his numbers year to year, I am surprised that, like, he consistently is an RB2, right? He was right at the
Mm-hmm.
end of RB2 last year at running back 24 in points per game in 2023, running back 20 in 2022, running back 13 in 2021, his best year, and then running back 18 in 2020. But it's been very up and down with him. Very not a lot of huge games, a lot of poor games. Like, I think in this new year with a new team, on his third team now, like, he has to prove he can be a workhorse. They gave him the money. He's on it's supposed to be a good offense with the Bears, with everything they've added this offseason, and, like, score some rushing touchdowns. I know that's not all his fault last year because Jalen Hurts kept stealing them, but I mean, each of the last 3 seasons, he has 5 rushing touchdowns. He needs more than that. Prove you can be a workhorse. That's what I'm looking for Swift this year.
Yeah, I mean, I also think he's make or break. I do like him a lot, but I'm siding on the make side. I think this is it. This is your opportunity. Now with Detroit, we know what was happening there, that he was a little slight. He couldn't stay on the field. He was the pass catching back. Jamal Williams just kind of vultured all the touchdowns. Then he went to Philadelphia. Okay, hometown team. We saw week 2 against the Vikings. He went off and we said, okay, he's rolling. And then inconsistency, injury, not always available. Then he got all his touchdowns pilfered by Jalen Hurts. So that was a good situation. Now he comes to Chicago, and they invested some good money in him early in free agency. So they're like thinking, we need to clean up this backfield. I think they were tired of Roshan Johnson and Khalil Herbert and Donta Foreman. So they said, okay, we're going to go in this direction. Give us a guy that could do a little bit of everything, help our young quarterback as well. I think that was a key, that he's a good pass catcher. So there are 2 questions here. Can Swift hold up if he gets those key carries in between tackles? The other question is, where are the targets to be found? Are they going to be consistent here? I don't think you go out and get Swift for a rookie quarterback unless you think there's a plan for him. And I think this is good that they have Shane Waldron. I think he's a rather running back friendly production coach, especially with what Kenneth Walker's done early. Just been pretty solid, right? Nothing spectacular, but solid where you can get that borderline RB1 production. So that's what I'm looking for with Swift.
And then one more running back. It's in a make or break year. He gets 1 year to prove his worth. It's finally coming. And what now? It's going to be his 5th NFL season. It's Zach Moss, my boy, Zach Moss. He's finally going to get a chance to be a starter for a team. This is his third team he's joining now too. Bills, where he just really never got a shot there to get much volume at all. And then the Colts, I mean, he was behind Jonathan Taylor, right? And when he did get his shot as a starter, he looked pretty good. But now with the Bengals, this is your first year. You're on a good offense. You need to stay healthy, right? Prove that you can stay healthy and prove that you can be a workhorse back in the NFL. And if he can't prove that, if he can't prove he's a good running back, like this is it for him. And this is probably it for like fantasy relevance as well in his career.
Yeah, I mean, he's started out with Devin Singletary in Buffalo. Then he was the backup last year that had really good games. So now he's the guy, and the Bengals are counting on him. I mean, Joe Mixon was no slouch there. I mean, every year you knew what we were getting: a good, solid runner, caught passes when you needed, and scored when you needed. Now they're counting on him to fill that role with Chase Brown as the kind of the change of pace here. So again, when the expectations are high, and we know this, right? The Alexander Madison effect. If you're put into a starting role as one of these backs, you don't know exactly what you're going to get, even though they've had some good history as a backup. So I would lean toward Moss being in too good of a situation, right? The Bengals offense is just too good. And there's just going to be trickle down points from whatever Joe Burrow does in the passing game, whether dumping off to Moss or using the passing game to open it up. So I don't see maybe a path to failure for Moss. Maybe I'm a little bit too rose-colored glasses there like you are, but I think it's a make season for Moss, at least as an RB2.
Yeah, I really hope he proves me right. 5 years later, I might get my revenge on the Twitter folks who've been hating on me for my Zach Moss takes, but I love him.
Yeah, he was a very talented back, and I think you live up to those expectations now. I'm looking forward to it. We'll talk in our next segment about some wide receivers who are facing some make or break seasons, some really nice names that were maybe torn on. All right, this episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. It is a very exciting time here, and man, I had to say I was excited last night because I liked the Knicks and Nuggets to come through at home, and their superstars showed up. We had Jalen Brunson, we had Nikola Jokic, so I love them in those Game 5s coming through. So a lot more action that you can get on here in the NBA and NHL playoffs. They're just getting more exciting with each game as things are getting tighter. FanDuel is giving a shot to bring home a big win of your own. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, as advertised, let's dive into those wide receivers facing make or break seasons. First up with the Falcons, we think we're leaning make here. I think you are too, Michelle, but let's go Drake London. He's just had awful quarterback play. Finally gets Kirk Cousins, the guy that can push the ball downfield to him.
I mean, yeah, he has to really prove that he's worth the 8th overall pick in the 20. Like he was an 8th overall pick in the 2022 draft by
That's
the
crazy.
Falcons. Now his numbers have been less than exciting. He's also been stuck on a pretty poor passing offense, right? So, but that's why this is a make or break season, because now you get a new offensive coordinator. Now you get Kirk Cousins, who's going to be able to deliver you the ball. You have to prove that you can be a wide receiver 1 in this league. And also, like, he's being drafted now in fantasy, like as a top 15 guy. Like, he's going to have to make a very big step forward. He only has 5 career games with more than 12 fantasy points in half PPR. Has scored fewer than 10 fantasy points in 21 of 33 career games. 64% of his games less than 10 fantasy points. And a big part of that, right, is because the Falcons didn't pass a ton. I get that. And he also only had 6 receiving touchdowns. But like, you're a big boy. Kirk Cousins is going to throw touchdowns, catch 10 of those, right? Like, he should have double-digit touchdowns this year, at least 8 or something like that. Should put up at least 1,100, 1,200 yards. And this is, if he can't do it now with Kirk Cousins, I just don't know if he's ever going to become that dominant wide receiver 1 in the league. I will say he's only 22 years old and he doesn't turn 23 till July. So there is time, but if you can't do it with Kirk Cousins in your 3rd year, you're probably never going to be like a huge star in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, he got drafted because of the size and the body and the athleticism. That's what stood out over Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson. He had to have something there that was going to make him go ahead of those guys. So there is definitely talent, and I think Drake London was one of those players that showed up in weekly bust lists, and they were like, he's a bust pretty much every week. So it's really not saying much when he's not going to produce in a lot of matchups. But now let's hope that he could show up on a few weekly bust lists. That says he's a stud worthy of starting every week and might run into a few tough matchups. So, yeah, you're right. There are no excuses here. I mean, I don't care if you've had bad quarterbacks, and everyone talks about that. Well, this receiver is going to be more motivated with a better quarterback. I don't think it works that way. I think you produce for whoever. I mean, Garrett Wilson's a professional. He went out there, caught passes from whoever was out there and produced. So Drake London has to show us that, I think. I mean, there's no excuses here. Even if it's Michael Penix at some point taking over, still a much better quarterback that you can throw in there downfield. So yeah, Drake London, come through. I think just be careful of being over aggressive. Wide receiver 15 top is maybe just a little aggressive for me when we haven't seen that yet.
Yeah. Another first round guy back in the day, Hollywood Brown, Marquise Hollywood Brown. He's joining his third team, started his first 3 years with the Ravens, then the last 2 with the Cardinals. Now he's with the Chiefs, right? And now he's like, I think if he went pretty much anywhere else, he wouldn't really be drafted. But now he's going in the middle rounds because he's with Patrick Mahomes. The thing is, he's never really done anything for fantasy, right? Wide receiver 51 in points per game last year, wide receiver 31 in 2022. His best year was wide receiver 26 in 2021. And then his first 2 years, he didn't do anything in fantasy either. But like going to your third team, you're playing with Patrick Mahomes. You have baby Rashee Rice on suspension. You're playing with a rookie. Like, get those targets, do something with your career, and be good for fantasy. If not, like if you can't do it with Patrick Mahomes in this offense, you're done. You're done. So, and he should not be on any more fantasy teams moving forward.
Yeah, I think this guy's always been overrated because his nickname is Hollywood. So we're like,
Yeah.
oh, we got to get Hollywood Brown on our team. He's going to be spectacular. But he's kind of been a flash in the pan. I mean, he just kind of makes cameo appearance, making some big plays, and will explode for a few games here and there because he's a speed deep threat. He really shouldn't have been a first round pick. I'll say that. And then he got somehow traded for a first round pick, which is insane. He's just not that type of receiver. He's a complimentary receiver. And what I like here, even if it's Xavier Worthy or whatever happens with Rashee Rice and Travis Kelce in the mix here, that he's not going to be the guy. He's going to get some single coverage here. He's not meant to be a number one. He's supposed to be a field stretcher. So what I'm hoping is all that stuff that Justin Watson used to do, all that stuff that Marquez Valdes-Scantling used to do, whatever they did at some points randomly to Kadarius Toney and whoever else was involved, that it all kind of funnels through him. All those big plays happen through what Marquise Hollywood Brown does. And I think he finally has a guy that's going to be just trying to throw him down to him downfield. This guy is not a great separator, so maybe getting those weaker corners away and maybe Worthy will draw attention, or there'll be double teams of Kelce. Those things will all be good for Marquise Brown. So I'm not going to go nuts. I'll be happy, and I'll call it a make if he finishes a wide receiver 3.
Ugh, I don't know about that. I don't know.
That's why I'm going to draft him. So, I mean, if he
Yeah.
makes it, I'll be fine.
That
But
will be his ceiling then, right? If he can be wide receiver,
I mean, you're looking at a wide receiver 3 or a wide receiver 6 or 7, and we're done with him forever. So that's how it works.
Another guy, like if he can just give you anything for a full year, Christian Watson, this is a big make or break year for him, not just in fantasy, but like in his NFL career, right? If the Packers are going to keep believing in him. Early second round pick just a couple years ago. He's heading in only to his third season, right? But he is already 25 years old. I was shocked by that. He has had a handful of really good games, right? He's shown us the ceiling. He's shown us those flashes. 6 games with over 18 fantasy points and half PPR, and then some really monstrous games besides those as well. But 10 or fewer points in 16 of 23 career games. 70% of the time in his career, he has scored 10 or fewer fantasy points, 6 or fewer points in 11 of 23 games, almost 50%. Like this dude is either as a massive game or does absolutely nothing. He has to prove this year that A, he can stay healthy, and B, he can catch a ball when he's open, right? Those two things need to happen this year, or else he needs to be off the fantasy radar completely in 2025.
Yeah, keep in mind, Michelle, that a lot of this production and the flash and the touchdown at an incredible rate really happened with Aaron Rodgers. So we haven't really seen him establish himself with Jordan Love as a key target. We've seen Jaden Reed do it as a rookie. We've seen a little bit of Dontavian Wicks. We've even seen a little bit of Romeo Doubs and the tight ends get on the same page here with Jordan Love. So we don't know really what we're going to get from Christian Watson when he's healthy to start a season. I mean, this durability issue is a concern. It always seems to be a soft tissue thing. If he's healthy, which I'm not betting on too much here. Like, I think he has a little bit of upside because he definitely is a talent, but it actually might start to become a crowd there. There's other young receivers that Jordan Love can rely upon and had better chemistry with while they were on the field last year. So I would lean more towards break for Watson. I just can't see it right now in this particular offense. And I don't know. He's so tantalizing. Maybe he has to just end up on a second team to see if we can get anything out of him.
Yeah, he might. I don't see it happening for him. I didn't love him coming out of school. He has the skill set, but he's very much like Marquise Valdes-Scantling. I think he's going to end up on many teams, have a couple big games here or there, but disappear more times than not. We're going to get into some candidates at the quarterback and tight end position that are heading into their make or break season in 2024, right after we hear from another one of our sponsors. This episode of Locked On Fantasy Football is brought to you by the Game Time app. Buying tickets to your favorite event shouldn't be stressful. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. With killer deals on last-minute tickets and the best price guarantee, you can stop stressing over the tickets and start getting hyped for the fun you'll have. We're in baseball season. I'm telling you, that's the best time to use this app. I mean, it's also great during the NFL too. I have used this app a gazillion times, but baseball season, if you're around a stadium, you can go to a game any given night. They play all the time. So whenever you feel like going to a game, having a beer, just chilling out, right? Hop on that app because it's so incredibly easy. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images of your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Buy tickets in a matter of seconds, 2 taps, and you're set. And tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Take the guessing work out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms do apply. Again, that's code LOCKEDONNFL, LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Terms do apply. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. All right, we're going to get into this first guy, and this is a huge make or break year for him, even though his team's still going to be paying him a gazillion dollars forever. So maybe he'll get more chances, but it's Deshaun Watson with the Browns, right? His 2 seasons with the Browns has been pitiful. Quarterback 25 in fantasy points per game in 2023. Quarterback 22 in 2022. We know when he was with the Texans, right? Quarterback 6 in 2020, quarterback 2 in 2019, quarterback 4 in 2018. We know his ceiling, but with the Browns, it's not happened. Now he's many off seasons now removed from those criminal issues. The noise should be lessened, right? This off season. He has a really good offense around him. He has a good offensive line. He has a new offensive coordinator in Ken Dorsey who knows how to use quarterbacks like him and get the most out of them. They don't really have a running game with Nick Chubb coming back from a devastating injury. Like, if he's not a top 8 fantasy quarterback this year, I don't think he's ever going to get back to what he once was.
Yeah, and it's funny. I talked about Justin Watson, then we talked about Christian Watson, then we're talking about Deshaun Watson. A lot of Watson on today's show, but like, this Watson is frustrating. And I look at him on the kind of the rankings that we're looking at, or ADP, and it's like, I guess we just don't care about him anymore. Like, he's there, but no one is really excited to draft him. I mean, goes beyond whatever you think about him off the field and the transition from Houston to Cleveland. Like, he just doesn't have that punch that he once had, that name, right? It's like, oh, you got Deshaun Watson, you're set. You got a QB1. Now it's like a stretch to even say he's a QB2, that he falls in the top 24, which is shocking to me because this guy's produced, and maybe it's a combination of all things. When you have the suspension, you have the injury, he just doesn't seem, I'll say, very motivated out there. Like, I don't think he's been like too determined. I mean, keep in mind, this team, when did it look the best last year? When you had a little bit of Joe Flacco sparking the team down the stretch. That's when it woke up Amari Cooper and David Njoku. I'm not sure what they're doing, but I think you do, and you have made this point about Ken Dorsey and opening up the passing game a little bit. So there's some hope there. I think the receiving core is fine. And what you need is this team to become more of a throwing team, get away from the defense, the running game, and just open up the passing game a little bit more. Now, I don't see that right away off the bat. I think you'll see the Cowboys, and probably not a good game to go nuts throwing on, right? The first game. So we'll see what the Browns' philosophy is. It's also a very tough division where you got some pretty good defenses. The Steelers and Ravens and the Bengals can actually bring in the pass rush. The Browns themselves have a good division. So there's not maybe a lot of upside for those big games. So all those things that Watson used to do, run like crazy to give you a floor, throw for those big plays, they just don't seem to be happening. I don't suddenly think that fire can just go back on.
I actually do, unfortunately, think he has a really good season this year and he's a great value. I won't have him on my team because I just don't want him on my
Yeah,
team.
I understand.
But like, I think he's going to have a pretty solid season. So I do think he makes it this year. Tua Tagovailoa, though, like he needs to prove something to get that massive contract, or maybe even gets it this year. Who knows? Jared Goff just got his. But quarterback 20 in fantasy points per game this last season, quarterback 10 in points per game in 2022, quarterback 23 in 2021. Tua just hasn't done it consistently, right? We saw some big games at the start of last year, but then a lot of bad games, scored 15 or fewer points and over nearly 60% of his games last year. He has the weapons. He has Tyreek Hill. He has Jalen Waddle. He has Devin Achane. He has Raheem Mostert. He has other complementary pieces the Dolphins brought in this offseason with OBJ and Malik Washington and Jonnu Smith. Like, this is your year to prove that you're a top 10 quarterback in this league and you want to be paid like one. Like, go prove it and be more consistent. And I don't know. I'm on the line here if I think he'll make it or break it this year.
Yeah, I think he's probably neither breaking it or making it. I think he's just going to be the same guy for a while. And what he reminds me of, in a weird way, is a left-handed Jimmy Garoppolo, where he's going to put up some numbers in some games, but he's never going to push like Brock Purdy does in this 49ers style of offense, or we've seen CJ Stroud put up some numbers. I just don't think you're going to see that because there's two things that really hurt Tua. There's zero from the rushing. Like, he gives you nothing in that aspect at all. So that is already gone. You don't have that backup floor. And he doesn't really light it up with touchdowns here, where they're very confident running the ball into the end zone. I don't think that's going to change too much because it's a very effective running game to me. And the touchdowns may be a little bit dispersed or lessened here, but you have Devin Achane, you got Raheem Mostert, you got Jeff Wilson Jr., you got enough guys that can score on the ground to maintain that. I think that's where, I mean, we know the 49ers score a lot that way as well. So I think they're more like the 49ers offense than the Texans are, if that makes sense. So I think you get rushing TDs. So the quarterback is more of a system guy. You look at the numbers that are there. I think, again, he's a lesser version, much lesser version of Brock Purdy, which tells me he's Jimmy Garoppolo. And Jimmy Garoppolo was always kind of in between QB 12 to 18 for most weeks, right? So that's what you're going to get. I don't think you'll ever get to a push into the top 8 or top 6 at quarterback.
So we're breaking him this year then. Then he's going to be off my radar for fantasy.
Yeah, he's just what he is.
Like, I feel like I might be buying into him this year, but we'll see. And then Trevor Lawrence, your dude, this is a huge make or break year for him. I mean, first overall pick, 4 years ago now, and he needs to prove that he's worth all the hype coming out of school. Quarterback 16 last year in fantasy points per game, and that was his top. Oh no, he had quarterback 11 in 2022, quarterback 33 in 2021 rookie season. But he just needs to prove that he's worth his name, right? His value. Like, he should be better than he is all I have to say. And he should be more consistent than he is. So this is a huge make or break year for him.
Yeah, for many reasons. I mean, he's under contract here with his 5th-year option for 2025, but he's looking for the big bucks. He's trying to be the next $50 million quarterback. I don't think he'll quite get Joe Burrow money, but I think they want to see that from him, push toward that. I mean, Joe Burrow's been to the Super Bowl, so he's had the special element. So is Jalen Hurts. So these guys have pushed and done a little bit more right now than what we've seen really of the other guy we talked about too, Tua, also looking for a contract here, which could help. But I look at Lawrence and I say, I think he's more talented than Tua by far. I mean, if Lawrence breaks here, this is not just I would say he's been kind of touted as like the best quarterback prospect for a long time since he stepped on the field at Clemson, like can't miss in the NFL. He hasn't quite shown us that. No. So I think he has to start showing us that. Like, if the Jaguars are going to be happy with what they're going to get from him, he's got to deliver here. And I think he has a potential. I think it really comes down to him staying healthy. And I think that has really hurt him because he's a movement type quarterback that helps if he can get on the move and make plays. He also puts up some decent rushing numbers, unlike Tua. So I'm not saying he totally goes nuts here, but I think he'll somewhat make it. Like, I think the Jaguars are going to pay him regardless. So I'm just going to go there with this. So I think he makes it because he has to make it at this point.
Yeah, he needs to. He really does. Now, there's two tight ends that are big in the make or break year for 2024. It's David Njoku, who's going into his 100th year in the NFL, but and then Kyle Pitts, right? We talked about Kyle Pitts a lot this offseason. We talked about him yesterday on Post Type Sleepers. Like, this is your year to show it. You have a good quarterback now. You should be targeted more. You got to put up touchdowns and you got to do something better. Kyle Pitts as the 4th overall pick as a tight end. But David Njoku is the one I really want to focus on because last year, he was a tight end 7 in fantasy points per game. He finally did something, right? We've been waiting for it forever. Because let's not forget, David Njoku was a first-round pick all the way back in 2017. But he did absolutely nothing for fantasy until Joe Flacco became the starter. Weeks 1 through 13, he averaged 42 receiving yards per game and had 2 receiving touchdowns during that span. He was averaging 7.3 fantasy points per game. He was a tight end 14 of fantasy points per game during that span. Like, if you're tight end 14, you're useless. You're completely useless. Basically anything after like tight end 8, you're useless. But weeks 14 through 17 with Joe Flacco averaged 93 receiving yards per game, had 4 receiving touchdowns, and 18.3 fantasy points per game. So pretty much the only reason he finished tight end 7 last year were those last 4 weeks he played. And it was with Joe Flacco. And I know people are still going to want to draft him this year, but like, this is his make or break. Can you consistently do it for a full season with Deshaun Watson, not with Joe Flacco? We shall see. I don't think it's going to happen.
Yeah, I'm also calling break on this one. I mean, there's nothing in his past as he gets older as a tight end that indicates he's going to duplicate this. It's kind of like that Eric Ebron season you had where he went nuts catching all those touchdowns for the Colts. You knew that was going to come. And now at least Njoku did it with some yardage and some volume. It wasn't touchdown dependent, but we've seen this before, even in Cleveland with Gary Barnidge. I mean, that's happened there like out of nowhere, and he put up some numbers, and that was it. He had like one good fantasy year. So I just don't think, I mean, you also look at Deshaun Watson's history, he really hasn't supported a tight end in production. Now, I know they didn't have great tight ends. That wasn't a big part of what they did in Houston, but still, that was not his thing. His thing is running around, trying to buy time, throw downfield, and that's what Deshaun Watson does. So that's why you didn't see it. Joe Flacco was older. He needed to get the ball out quickly and get it to a tight end. So, yeah, I'm with you, break all the way.
Yeah, that's it for today's show. Thank you to you all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day, every dinner. I almost said every day. Vinnie and I will be back tomorrow with an awesome new episode talking more fantasy greatness. Bye, y'all.